On this episode, we're gonna work on the back half of Tacoma a little more and start cutting up the bed and raising the floor up to match body lines and get it all laid out. Follow along, we'll do that and see where else we get. So get into the details of what we're gonna do on this floor. Spent some pretty good time going over this and kind of thinking about and trying to figure out the best plan on how to cut this bed floor. What we're trying to do is we've got to raise the bed floor up about 4 inches. 3.5 would probably be the minimum. We're gonna go a little bit more just to make sure everything fits and we don't have any clearance issues of it being real tight. So my goal was to try to cut this, raise the floor up and with the least amount of work, retain the factory braces, you know, and like the sides and how it all looks and everything, and not just cut the floor out, raise it up and use a bunch of square tubing. So try to make it look more like a factory floor would be and all that. So it took some doing and kind of planning. So what we're gonna do here is there's a seam back here where the bed floor is spot welded to this main structure piece back here. So what we're gonna do is cut these spot welds off here. That will release the bed floor in the back. And then come over here, come up this vertical seam where it's spot welded as well. And then we're gonna start taking 4 inches out of these sides. And where it gets tricky is, so when you section a vehicle, which is basically what this is doing, is you can change where you section it in the body without any trouble by making a vertical cut line. So we'll come in here and we'll section 4 inches out, but then it's gonna screw up for this panel. So we'll cut a vertical line up here and we'll move that section up and we'll keep sectioning this way. And the hardest part about this whole thing is this wheel well area above here. So what we're gonna do is end up this little recess panel. We're gonna end up cutting this front little narrowed section out all the way on both up there and here. And then we're gonna take those out, cut all these sections and move up. And then we should be able to take this, and as this comes up, now this little point here will probably be back in here somewhere because this will be all moved up. So this recess panel will come up in here like this and stop. And then we'll just have a little bit of like a flat filler panel to fill right here. And that'll move this all up. So basically we'll have like from here all the way to the inside of the rail. And then we're gonna have to figure out, we don't quite know how this is all gonna work out until we get into it. Same thing here on this one, we'll cut this section out, take it out, then section it here. The front bed panel bolts in. So we're gonna be able to just unbolt the front bed, section out 4 inches, tag it back together, put it back in, and then be able to work on the sides. So there's a brace here and there. The spot welded right here, we've stayed above it so we don't mess with the factory brace and bed mount and all that. So all that should be retained. So I guess that's really where we're gonna start, see how it all works out, see if my plan actually makes sense. And then as we go along, we'll show you what we're doing and all the cutting of the time lapse. And if things change, we'll go from there and figure it out. So stay tuned. So now we got the sections of the bed floor cut out. Thought I'd kind of go over and show you. What we first started to do is we unbolted this front bed panel, sectioned 4 inches out of it, so you can see the line here. So we still retained the inset panel and all that, and then bolted it back together. So this shows how far this bed floor is gonna raise up, because this will now match this. So we bolted it back in to keep everything aligned as we started working around. And so what we did here is, what I was explaining before, is you got the 4-inch gap, and then we cut vertically so that we can move it. Like here, we wanted to avoid the tie down location to retain that, and then came over here, cut out this section here for this little piece on the inset, and then just worked our way all the way around here. So this whole bed floor will just be able to raise up, you know, see like that point will go right up into that point will be right there. So this just kind of shows it all here exposed before we start fitting everything together. So we'll go through and sand all the edges here, get all the paint off and clean them all up before we get ready. And then we came here in the back, and you can see where we sanded off all the spot welds from the factory floor. So this will allow the factory floor to just lift up off this rear brace here. So you can just lift it all up, and then we'll just have to make a vertical panel. We'll just break a piece of metal 90 and then down, and that 90 will go along here and then come down and sit back. Actually, it might be a C channel, not really sure. We'll find out when we lift it up. We're just kind of winging it as we go. So this should allow this whole thing to lift up, and then there'll just be a seam around it that we can weld up. So we'll get this all sanded up. I just thought I would kind of show you what Joe's been after. We'll keep going. We got it all cut out here. After you unbolt part of the panel, it just fell right down. So lines up pretty good here. You can see this corner's still cut out here, but there's the 4-inch section, and we still retained this factory recess. And so then let me grab this piece here. There's the piece we cut out right here. So we'll end up cutting this up here and just using this little corner and fitting it in here. And then there'll just be a little triangle flat that we'll have to fill in there. And we'll do that on all 4 corners, and that'll fit in. So what we did is, so it just all set down here, and you can see how the vertical lines just line up. And then it just sits down on the edge here. Cut the spot welds, and then there'll just be this 4-inch gap here in the back. So we're gonna go ahead and try to carefully pick this thing up. It's not all tacked together or anything, so Joe and I will try to pick it up, stick it on there, and make sure we have enough floor raise in it, and make sure everything clears before we go through and start tacking this all up, and test fit it on the truck before we get too far along. We'll show that and see how bad we struggle on moving a cut, half held together bed. See if it holds together. Come on, baby, don't fall. Oh yeah, it's heavy in the rear. There we go. Watch the jack stands. Oh man, this bed flares. This bedside's flaring out real bad without that brace on there. Yeah, that actually lines up pretty well. As far as, is your side all flared out? Not as bad as that one. Oh, that one's really flared out. Yeah, inches. It's what? Bed jack. Yeah, I know. Look at that. Sweet. That looks a lot better. That's just knocked up there real quick. So we gotta, front's gotta come up. a little bit. Looks like the back actually got to come down a little bit, which will bring the front up. But that'll fits pretty good in the wheel well. Yeah, so that's awesome. So now that we got this test fit on here, we stood the bed up. Well, actually, at first what we did is just put a few tacks around it so that the bed held together. Now we stood it up on its end, and you can walk around here and you can see, I can show you where we've tacked it up here a little bit. And then also, where I was talking about, we were putting the corner of this reveal in. So we cut this little part down, and then there's a little tiny triangle right here, if you can see it. We had to add that little triangle in there because this little corner piece moved this way to be able to make this reveal. So when this gets all welded up, then you won't even be able to tell it'll look factory. So we just have it all stitched up right now, making sure everything's gonna fit and all that. So it's got the 4-inch section on it that we took out of it. So the other thing you gotta do is we'll come around here to the inside of the bed. So this is the rear bed mount, and it was here on this factory sill. So what we ended up doing was cutting the spot welds off the bottom side and moving the floor up by cutting the spot welds. So we left all this structure, so everything. So this was mounted here, so we just cut the spot welds off and moved it down here. Now it's moved, now it's in line with the rest of these floor braces here. So we spot welded it back, and then it's made a little bit of like a little spacer here to hold it. This one, it used to sit on here, so it had some support. Now it doesn't. So we just spot welded those back on, and then made a 4-inch filler panel here in the back. So it's just a piece of C-channel out of sheet metal, and then we'll just spot weld it back on. And that is the only piece that we had to make to raise this floor 4 inches. So after we get this all on, the next thing we're gonna have to do is put the bed mounts on. And these are bed mounts that we developed specifically for this chassis and the Tacoma. And the cool thing about these is they're actually adjustable. So this way you can fine tune. It's got a ton of adjustment in it. We don't need this much adjustment, but this allows for several, I would say like an inch of difference in bed mount drop or raise. And it also lets you just fine tune everything to get the chassis and the bed and everything all square and level. We're gonna use a laser and check body lines and do all that. So this is like the rear one, so it'll go here and mount up, and that accounts for the 4 inches of floor raise as well. And then we'll be able to fine adjust it here. So we're gonna get these tacked on the 4 corners and then be able to test fit the bed. And the reason we want to do that is we want the bed to be bolted, squared, straight, everything before we final weld all the way around it. That way we know everything's straight, and when we go to weld it all back together, it's not all crooked and warped and then have to tweak the bed after that, after it's painted. So that's where we're at. So we'll get that done and check back in. right, now we got the bed on the new mounts that are tacked on the chassis. And we're gonna go through and we're gonna take a laser level and put it on the body line and level up the bed, square it up so it's not all tweaked. And then we can start going around and welding all the seams up and do everything. And then we'll come over here, I'll show you. This will be a better view of what we did here on the raising the bed floor. So you can see this panel we built. So this bed floor used to be down here on the bottom. And so we've raised this 4 inches, so we just made a C channel out of 16 gauge steel. And then we're just gonna be able to re-spot weld it. Got the Clecos holding it now. And then this is just weld through primer so that we have good corrosion resistance where we can't get to. So then we can go through, weld all this up, and then the factory, this would have had seam sealer here so we can re-seam seal it. So, and then also I think what I'm gonna do is put the gas filler right here in the center and it'll go straight down to the tank. And then we'll just weld up the gas door on the side of the bed. Just something to clean it up that I wanna do. It's not required, but that pretty much wraps up the bed. As far as all the modifications now, it's just doing all the tedious welding and grinding and fitting stuff, but those are all the major modifications. Oh, the one other thing we did have to do is there's a center bed support right in the rail between the bed rails, or between the wheel tubs, and we had to cut a little bit out because of the notch from the chassis, from the frame, hit that, so we just cut a little section out and then it clears. It's super close, so we just cut it out of the way and made it easier that way. So we have about, this is basically the minimum amount of floor that you can raise it, 4 inches. You could go a little bit more, 4.5, and then you wouldn't have to cut that bed rail part out or whatever, but we were trying to get the most amount of bed space we could and usability. So anyway, that's what we got here for bed modifications, and we'll wrap it up and keep going. So I was just, this is wanted to show you what these adjustable bed mounts do and how easy they make it to adjust this bed. Is if you can, a little bit hard to see with the laser, but we got the laser right here on the body line, and you can see our bed's probably like, I don't know, 3/8, half an inch low. And so with that, there's a little jack screw in the bottom of that body mount. So we can literally just come in here, just put this up on jack screw. Just like that. And it's adjusted. So, hey dog, you wanna help? It's so easy, the dog can do it. All right, so yeah, that's how we adjust it up and level the bed. We ended up putting the truck up on these wheel stands we have so we can get underneath and check everything for clearance on the bed. So we ended up getting it all welded back up and ready to go. And then the final thing was to check, make sure we had clearance on everything, and then just give it a once over. And I'll show you here what we got. The one other thing I did was, so here's the notch for the, not really the notch, but the step up for the bed, here, the 4 inches. I ended up deciding I wanted to put the fuel filler here. So I 3D printed a little spacer that's angled, puts it at like 15 degrees, and then that'll be there. So that'll go right in and dump into the tank, because we're gonna end up putting a fuel cell right here in the back. And then if I grab this, here's some panels, but we ended up making a patch panel for the gas filler door. So also cut out all the double walled part of the bed, and then we'll have that to be able to weld in. So anyway, we have this all fit up, ready to go, and we're gonna load it up and take it to the body shop pretty much and get it ready and start prepping it for final paint and body work. That's what we got. Hope you guys got some information out of it, at least what we did on this one. It was pretty straightforward, the bed floor raise. pretty minimal work. Hope that was informative. Follow along as we do the next steps. The next one is doing all the accessories probably for the back half. Fuel tank, air, plumbing, brake plumbing, rear disc brakes, and that stuff on the rear. And then the truck will pretty much be wrapped up, ready to go to paint. All right, see ya.